The world remembers the winter of 1892 as a season of bitter winds and record-breaking frost. But in the northernmost reaches of Michigan, along the jagged and unforgiving shores of Lake Superior, the cold was not the enemy. The cold was a shroud, hastily pulled over a truth that could collapse the fragile sanity of the modern world. For over a century, the official archives maintained that a standard outbreak of winter influenza cleared out the logging camps of Sector 14. They claimed the isolation drove men mad, and the ice simply claimed what was left. But archives are written by the survivors, and the survivors were ordered to lie. Look closely at the photographs from that December. Notice the positioning of the men standing on the black ice. They aren't looking at the camera. They aren't looking at each other. Their eyes are fixed entirely on a singular, perfectly circular breach in the ice, a hole cut from beneath. It began without a sound. In October 1892, Camp 14 was the most profitable logging operation in the region, housing over 80 seasoned frontiersmen and their families. By late November, all communication stopped. The supply trains returned untouched. The telegraph lines went dead, not cut by the wind, but carefully disconnected from the main terminals. When a rescue party was finally assembled by the local sheriff, they found a ghost town preserved in frost. The fires had burned out weeks ago, yet food remained on the tables, frozen solid mid-meal. There were no signs of struggle, no blood on the snow, no marks of violence. But the children's quarters told a different story. In every cabin, the small wooden beds were empty. The windows didn't look broken from the outside. They had been shattered from the inside out, as if something small had desperately leaped into the sub-zero darkness. The search party followed the tracks. Dozens of small barefoot imprints leading away from the cabins, straight across the snow, directly toward the frozen expanse of Lake Superior. And there, 3 miles from the shore, the tracks simply vanished into open, churning water that refused to freeze, despite the absolute zero temperatures. The government brought in specialists under the guise of quarantine. Among them was Dr. Alistair Vane, a neurologist whose private journals were recovered from a collapsed basement in 1974. His entries provide the first terrifying look into what the locals began calling the deep sickness. December 4th, 1892. We located the first survivor today, a boy of no more than 9 years, found wandering the pine woods 10 miles south of the lake. His skin is unnaturally pale, almost translucent, and the capillaries beneath his cheeks pulse with a dark, rhythmic fluid that is certainly not blood. He does not blink. When I shine the lantern into his eyes, his pupils do not dilate. They contract into vertical slits, resembling the predatory optics of deep-sea fauna. He does not speak language anymore. When he opens his mouth, a low, resonant hum vibrates from his throat, a frequency that causes the glass vials in my medical kit to crack and shatter. The local priest insists on an exorcism. I insist on an asylum. But in my heart, I fear neither God nor science has a name for what this child has become. December 12th, 1892. The hum is spreading. The guards assigned to the quarantine ward are beginning to stare into the corners of the rooms. They claim they can hear the ice cracking, even though we are miles from the shore. 2 men deserted their posts last night. We found their boots by the well, just their boots. To understand why the earth opened its mouth, one must look below it. In the late 19th century, the iron and copper mines of the Upper Peninsula were digging deeper than any human enterprise had ever dared. Steam-powered drills tore through layers of Precambrian rock that had remained undisturbed for 2 billion years. According to the heavily redacted blueprints of the Superior Mining Company, on October 14, 1892, Drill Core 9 struck a subterranean void beneath the lake bed. The pressure gauge did not drop. It spiked to a level that exploded the iron casings. A dark, pressurized vapor poured into the mine shafts, smelling of ancient salt water and decayed vegetation. Within minutes, the lowest levels of the mine flooded, not with water, but with a thick, black, oil-like substance that defied gravity, crawling upward along the wooden support beams. The miners who escaped the deep shafts didn't celebrate. They gathered on the surface, dropped their tools, and began walking in unison toward the lake. The industry had opened a door, and whatever was on the other side had been starving in the dark for eons. By January 1893, the Department of the Interior took absolute control of the region. A railroad line was laid overnight, bypassing all civil checkpoints. They called it the Ghost Train. Every ledger, every birth certificate, every land deed belonging to the inhabitants of the coastal towns was gathered and burned in the courtyard of the county courthouse. The government did not just want to hide the incident, they wanted to retroactively delete the people who witnessed it. We have managed to reconstruct a portion of the redacted Ledger 44 from salvaged fragments. Subject 12, Thomas Miller, age 34. Occupation, blacksmith. Status, transported to unknown facility 3. Notes, discovered trying to sew his own eyelids shut to stop the lights from the water. Subject 19, Clara Higgins, age 6. Status, terminated during transit. Notes, body tissue displayed advanced calcification, skeletal structure altered. Subject ceased respiration but continued to emit acoustic frequencies after clinical death. Subject 40, entirety of Infantry Unit 7. Status, missing in action. Notes, entered the mine shaft on December 28th to retrieve anomalous materials. No return recorded. Shaft sealed with structural explosives from the surface. How do you hide an entire localized apocalypse? You build a narrative. The newspapers of 1893 were filled with sensational stories of the World's Fair in Chicago, distraction campaigns engineered to keep journalists away from the Great Lakes. Photographs from the era were meticulously altered. In the original plates found in private collections, the horizons of Lake Superior show massive, dark silhouettes rising from the mist. Structures that resemble jagged, non-Euclidean towers made of black stone. In the published prints, these towers were carefully scratched away, replaced by crude drawings of clouds or fog banks. The witnesses who refused to stay silent were committed to the Northern Michigan Asylum, an institution whose basement floors were kept under armed military guard until its abandonment in the late 20th century. Visitors to the ruins today still report a strange phenomenon. Your phone battery drops to 0 within seconds of entering the lower cells, and the air carries the distinct, unmistakable scent of ancient lake water. The archives remain sealed under National Security Directive 10A, renewed every 30 years without public debate. The official maps show Lake Superior as nothing more than a massive body of fresh water, a vital shipping lane for the modern economy. But the old fishermen who live on the borders of the dead zones know better. They know that when the winter wind howls from the north, it doesn't sound like wind. It sounds like a choir of thousands of voices, perfectly harmonized, humming a single, ancient frequency from beneath the ice. They say, the lake never gives up its dead, but they never ask. What happens when the dead are no longer human?